Hi, we're back again here in lovely St. James Park, and we have another video for you on the 7 deadly sins of modernity. Now today we're going to be talking about what I would call banal religiosity, banal religiousness. We're going to be discussing the underlying questions in the debates between religious people and atheists, you know, the likes of Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, and perhaps the better of the religious apologists. Now, we're not necessarily going to be talking about religion itself, whether Christianity or Islam is justified or good or virtuous, or whether atheism is the only rational choice. We're going to be going a bit deeper than that in trying to find out what exactly it means for something to be religious. We often get a sense in the political scope of things that many people hold to their political dogmas or convictions or sides and parties with a religious zeal, or in a sense they assume things axiomatically, dogmatically. So let's start us off with Carl Gustav Jung, a Swiss psychiatrist who termed himself a phenomenologist. By phenomenologist, he meant that he studied phenomena, things that are, things that manifest. And so he came up with this definition of subjectivity and objectivity, or subjective and objective, in his field. He said that which is subjective is the thing which exists in a single individual. That which is objective is something which exists in all individuals, in all of us. Let's study a bit the etymology of these words. So something is subjective because it relates to the subject. I am a subject, and to my internal subjectivity, only I have immediate access. That makes it subjective. Something is objective if, like this bench, it's an object in external reality, and it's universally accessible to all of us. You can see this bench, a passerby could see its bench, and we could all describe it and agree on its attributes. It's equally available to all of our perceptions. That makes it objective. Now, if there are certain phenomena within our psyche which universally reoccur within all of us, then in a sense, those two are objective. Even though they are within a subject, they are within all subjects. And I have, through access to my own version of it, I have access to your version of it. What Jung says is that once you've got a set of axioms, a set of things that you assume are true about the world, a set of things which you assume to be the fundamental building blocks of reality, you will end up building onto those things structures, meaningful structures to explain the world, which are nothing more than a manifestation of your internal structures. That the archetypes and characters and tropes and narrative structures which live within me because I'm a human being conditioned to be and act a certain way, and pursue certain drives and live in certain types of society and pursue certain interests. Because of these, there are narratives and archetypes which continuously reoccur within me and within you and within all of us. And if we collectively try to make the world meaningful based on a set of axioms, we are simply going to be explaining those axioms and the world and phenomena around us with those internal structures. Now, there are essentially two drives or purposes through which we can do this. One of it is to make the world as meaningful as possible for an individual or a society, and the other one is to describe the physical world as accurately as possible. If you do it the second way, you're going to end up with scientific theories. We shouldn't fool ourselves that scientific theories are built on a more stable foundation than any religious mumbo-jumbo, simply because they're all based on a set of axioms about the world. Of course, science is accurate. I don't deny science. That would be foolish. It's an impossibility. All I'm simply saying is that we must realize that science is built on axioms just like everything else. Thomas Kuhn, in his work, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, asks the question whether Aristotle was any less scientific than Newton or Einstein. He says no. Aristotle had a set of axioms on which he built a set of theories to explain reality. At some point, people realized that his theories do not explain all reality and cannot, that there are certain phenomena which lie outside of his theories, and that his theories at times contradict itself. then what they had to do is, since the method was correct by which they reached those conclusions, is they had to change the axioms. They underwent a paradigm shift. And so these continuous paradigm shifts, we start ending up in more and more accurate axioms. Axioms which are accurate in that they help us, through the scientific method, build very accurate pictures of reality. Let's move back to the other drive which can drive us or move us to build these paradigms. And that is not to gain as accurate a picture of the mechanistic nature of our universe as possible, but to as accurately describe the subjective experience of being with a capital B in this world, grounded into it and in a society. In these forms, whenever you look at Roman religion, Greek religion, you look at religions of Aborigines people in the depths of the Amazon or in the Siberian plateaus, you look at Christianity or Islam, what you see is that all these are sets of axioms about the fundamental building blocks of the world, and what we do is we merely project onto them our internal archetypal structures. Now we get to the very interesting question of the relationship of external reality to our own subjective internal experiences. We've seen how all of our subjective experiences are mediated through these paradigms of thought that we create. And these paradigms of thought, our experience of material reality are mediated through these paradigms of thought because they are projected onto it. And these paradigms of thought are, again, nothing more than my projection of my internal subconscious structures. The reason this is interesting is because what it means is that only by projecting my internal world onto materiality, only through the mirror image, the mirror of materiality, do I gain insight into the depths of my subjectivity. And that is reality. Reality is in between. Right? That's the interesting point that we're getting to here. Reality is in between the subject and the object. What do I mean by that? So when Dante goes under into hell, he says, and we lost track of the stars, and as we did that, our greatest fears became our greatest desires. I think what he means by that is that the stars are this Archimedean third point, something by which you triangulate yourself. That without this reference, external reference point, the only thing you have is your internal thoughts. Now, a more down-to-earth example is I had just woken up, I hadn't eaten anything, I was still a bit tired and drowsy, and I sent a couple of text messages. And then I read my text messages back and I realized it didn't make sense. It had no grammatical structure, it was just a jumble of words and ideas. And then only after realizing this could I collect my thoughts better. But I had not realized, before having written it down, I had not realized how jumbled my internal world was. I was just going about my day. What this means is that only by manifesting ourselves into external reality can we gain an understanding of our inner world. That as Dante goes into hell, his fears become his desires, because without the external world to keep him grounded, his thoughts become jumbled. He could never understand himself. Externality is the mirror which lays us bare. It is only through the banal facts of reality that I can see the most meaningful depths of my humanity. And Kierkegaard says this interestingly. He says, only those who work get their evening bread. And he says that the world from which this sentence gains its sense, the material world, is the world in which this statement isn't true. It's only true of a higher world. He says that I want to make statements about this higher, this perfect world. And the only way I can do that is by reference to the basic world. Now, let me give you a demonstration, more practical. Imagine you travel back 50,000 years to visit an ancestor of yours who's a caveman. And you want to communicate. He's not there, he's gone far away, but you can communicate by drawing lines in the sand or on a cave. How do you communicate that you've gone to the middle of the river? Well, you can draw the river, so you might draw like the waves of the river, like an ideogram of it. But how do you communicate the idea of the middle? Well, the ancient Egyptians drew a line, and onto this line they drew a cube like a square at the middle of the line, right? So that's an abstract idea. What they said is that the line can represent any possible thing, and the square in the middle indicates where it's pointing to. It's the middle of any possible given thing. So I draw the pictogram for river, and then I draw this pictogram, this ideogram for the middle, and that essentially communicates this. And so my caveman ancestor and I can find ourselves very well. What this illustrates is that the only possible way to capture abstract higher ideas is through reference to everyday objects. Again, going back to Dante, what's the first word that Dante uses in the Commedia? Midway through this life of ours. The first word is midway. That's lovely, isn't it? And let's look at the rhyme scheme of Dante. It's called terza rima, right? Which is A, B, A, B, C, B, C, D, C. The middle line of every stanza becomes the main rhyme of the next one. A, B, A, B, C, B. This gives us that always a rhyme is finishing at some point, but before it finishes, a new one has been started which hasn't finished yet. We are always in the middle of things. We are always moving. And as he says, one leg is always on the ground, one leg is in the air. We are always in the act of taking the step. We are always in the middle. We saw already in the last video how external reality by itself is meaningless. It's just a collection of facts, statements. But we also saw today in this video how our internal world by itself is jumbled and cannot make sense of itself. There is this theory, I don't know who came up with it, I don't even know if it's true, but it's interesting, that the only reason that we have conversations is so that we can keep each other from going insane and mad. That we are always just mediating each other to a common norm. We are always just trying to converge to a sense of normality. Because if we were isolated for too long, we would simply go mad. There would be nothing to ground us. And so if we are pure meaning, and yet we cannot make sense of ourselves without reality, and reality is merely just facts which are banal and meaningless, valueless, well, it's interesting that neither is good enough by itself. It is only through the mediation, the touching of reality and our internal subjectivity that anything becomes meaningful. Wittgenstein, in another book, not the one we discussed last time, and what the book is called The Foundations of Mathematics, his lectures on the foundations of mathematics, discusses this idea. He says, imagine an island full of relatively primitive people who have some type of art. They've got, for example, they paint on carpets or walls. And what they paint is complex mathematical symbols, perhaps, integration and square roots and all of this. But they have no understanding of mathematics as such. They can barely add above 10 digits, and yet they've got these as wall paintings because they find it aesthetic the way it looks. Now obviously he's saying this does not constitute a mathematical knowledge. They should not be prided on the fact that they've discovered Einstein's equations just because they can write E equals mc squared. What he's saying by this is that even mathematics has to live within an individual. It has to be understood. It has to be understood in the subject. And again, this is not trying to attack the objective nature of mathematics. Once something is proved in mathematics, it's objective. Again, objective in the sense that once Pythagoras' theorem is proved for you, it is proved for me. We both have objective access, equal access to the object of the proof. It's objective in that sense, but it's subjective in the sense that mathematics and mathematical understanding only live within us. And we are, as creatures, bounded by the way we understand anything. I was reading this long book of Dostoevsky, The Brothers Karamazov, and I thought to myself that I can remember the last line very, very well. I had just read it. And the last chapter I can recount in a bit more detail, but as further and further I go back, less and less clear is my exact memory of things, and more muddled. It's more simply a symbol, a feeling, an emotion. Perhaps as you're walking down the street sometimes, you're thinking to yourself, but you're not thinking in full sentences. You're thinking almost pre-linguistically. It's not just emotion, it's almost like the sound of words. Or perhaps if you're dreaming and you see words written down, you feel their meaning, you feel the sensation of their meaning. It seems like it's got a familiar meaning, even though it's not exactly clear what it is. It's in this sense how memories and our past gets compressed. We cannot remember every single action that happened to us exactly. That would never be useful. As we move on in our life, the past and the things I read in a book earlier become compressed to their most meaningful forms. In a sense, and this is going back to Jung's archetypes, imagine a hill. Well, at the top of the hill, you put a ball down and that's an equilibrium, it's stable, the ball doesn't move it by itself. But if you push the ball in any direction, it starts rolling. So it's an unstable equilibrium. Now, once the ball has reached the plateau, the bottom of the valley, well, you move it and it just goes back to where it was. And if you place it anywhere else on the hill, it just rolls back down to the bottom of the hill. What I'm saying is that if you place humanity or single individuals into any historical setting, they will always find these points of equilibria. Some are stable, like the bottom of the valley, and some are unstable. But our minds converge to the same archetypes, the same narratives. As my past recedes and I can't remember everything, as I follow on in a book and I'm not remembering everything, the past and our memories gets compressed into their most essential, meaningful core. And like the ball rolling down to the bottom of the hill, the way in which meaningful things are stored within our minds are within these archetypal narrative structures. These are the stable equilibria of our mind. And what we must realize because of this is that there is no such thing as a true religion devoid of any material resemblance. And there is no such thing as a true science or a true atheist who is not confined by his human nature to simplify and compress things to their archetypal structures. Because engaging with these archetypal structures of our mind and perception is in fact a religious undertaking. Religious in the sense that you're dealing with loose, chaotic structures, symbols, and nothing more. That even mathematics has to be understood subjectively. It has to be understood and built on these fundamental forms of understanding. Even the most rigid and rigorous science is based on axioms which are chosen relatively arbitrarily and are only chosen because a human mind can conceptualize them, conceive of them. This is not undermining the validity of the facts of science or the pursuit of science. And it is not an apology for religious dogma and hatred. It is simply a realization of our human nature, that everything, in a sense, all of our understanding is constructed on proto-religious grounds. It's constructed in the middle path between subjectivity and objectivity. It is constructed based on these symbols, these archetypal symbols to which our mind continuously converges.